Hey there, guys. Welcome to the Holy Shed. I hope that you're well. It's been a stormy weekend, hasn't it, for some of us? I hope that you've survived the fury of Darrow without too much disruption. Here in London, it's not been too bad, to be honest, compared with a lot of other places. But we're thinking about, of course, those two people who've lost their lives because of Darrow and their families. So tragic, and others who are now faced with the prospect of floods or whatever as heavy rain follows in the wake. Climate, eh? Things ain't like they're supposed to be, as far as I can see, and I don't see it getting a lot better unless we do something about it. But anyway, on a brighter note, let me introduce you to this little person who is certainly a survivor if ever I saw one. Bless their cotton socks, he or she. Don't know the story, but beautiful picture. Don't know if you've ever had days when you feel like that. I know I have. Now, I've been talking in recent holy sheds about the pickle that we're in as a church, with particular reference to the Church of England. And oh my goodness, listening painfully to the Archbishop of Canterbury's astonishingly ill-judged speech in the House of Lords this week, and the reaction of commentators, which has been pretty brutal, but also more importantly victims, one of whom described the Archbishop as tone deaf. Can you imagine? If you pity anyone, pity my diary secretary, he said, with no reference to pitying the victims. I mean, what on earth was he thinking? And then an inevitable apology, it's just such a mess. But setting that aside, I'm picking up more on the wider pickle that the church is in, only added to by the Smythe debacle. But as I'm sure you know, the last census revealed that fewer people than ever before now identify as Christian, even in a nominal sense. The figure has dropped, in fact, to 46.2%. And on the other hand, the nones, people who identify as not religious, has risen by an almost equivalent amount to 37.2%. And with all of that in mind, Linda Woodhead, who's an academic expert on such matters, she's identified 6 significant changes that she sees have taken place in this country in terms of religious identity. And I've put them on a slide because it's worth taking a quick glance at them. She says that huge changes have taken place since the late 1980s. So beneath those raw figures of the census, she says that people who identify as Christian are mostly over 50. The under 30s mainly identify as non-religious. That alone is a stark fact and a reminder of what I see all the time, that the church is overwhelmingly dying of old age. The good news is, she says, that those nones shouldn't all be thought of as atheists. Atheism, she says, is not a particularly growing concern in this country, but it's religion that's declining, not spirituality. Many people in the nones category do identify in some shape or form as being spiritual or have spiritual aspirations. Religion, on the other hand, she says, has become a toxic brand. For many people, it signals authoritarian, archaic, out of touch. And the whole John Smythe stuff and things we've been experiencing over the past couple of weeks can only really add to the toxicity of the brand, I'm afraid. But she says choice and participation are now the name of the game. With over half the population now going to university, education and critical thinking is much more of a factor than it was in years gone by, and people are being led to a more to values and ideas that are of greater liberality and openness, which stands in stark contrast to the conservatism that you so often find within the church on, ethical and cultural issues. It's a crisis, she says, of religious authorities. The formal and the institutional is rejected in favour of a hunger after spirit and life. And she says that many people see the two things as being, in opposition, that so often religious institutions are a blockage on the spiritual life of people. But then lastly, she says there's lots of spiritual vitality around on the ground, but it is overwhelmingly divorced from religious institutions. The future, she says, is open. We don't know where all this will go, but it could change, and there could still be a role for, religion in its truest and best sense. And that throws a ball into our court, that we can be agents of change. So, as I often say, people are no less spiritual, no less spiritually open and hungry than they ever have been, but they are a whole lot less religious. Not so long ago, these two things, spirituality and religion, were seen as pretty much synonymous. If someone was religious, it was presumed that they would be spiritual and vice versa. But now a rupture has occurred between the two. So nowadays there are masses of people who consider themselves spiritual in some way, who will never dream of stepping foot into a church. So the problem isn't that 21st century people are spiritually bored or disengaged. It's religion that they're disaffected by, bored with, apathetic toward. Think of it like this, because I often hear people complaining, religious people complaining that, the country has lost its faith and, that people have turned away from God and all that kind of nonsense. But think of it like this, there'd be no use, would there, having a high street shop full of tired, weary, outmoded old products and items to sell, and then complaining that no one comes into the shop anymore. But I'm afraid that's how it is with many churches. They're just not offering what people are attracted by, what they want, or what they feel that they need. The Australian writer and academic David Tacey, he runs university courses in Melbourne on contemporary spirituality. And these are constantly oversubscribed by students with overwhelmingly no interest in religion. So there you've got the issue right there, haven't you? Tacey says that if this is to change, if churches are to engage successfully in the 21st century with people, they must shift away from what he calls devotional worship to become centres of existential spirituality. That's a lovely mouthful. He's not saying that worship or liturgy has got no place, not at all, but rather that it must change and evolve in order to resonate with contemporary needs and sensibilities, that it must be re-spirited in order to scratch where people are itching, to empower people to deal effectively with the stresses and strains of the 21st century, in order to enable people to be more fully alive, to help transform and repair the world at whatever level that they can. Now, one of the things that staggers me about the Church of England is how golden opportunities on a plate so often go to waste. I'm talking about the kind of hatch, match and dispatch kind of element, what's called the occasional offices, which I think offer an enormous opportunity to connect with people at a spiritual level. It won't last forever, but the Church of England is still the default church for many non-church going people who may want, a religious wedding, or want their baby christened or blessed, or want some kind of religious funeral for a loved one. For better or worse, people don't go for these things to a Baptist church or a Pentecostal church or whatever. They go to their parish church. And sometimes that's great, There are some very fine parish priests out there. But I meet far too many people whose experience of the church is not good, who've encountered rigidity and, paternalism and non-negotiable attitudes from clergy and from churches. Myself, I have found that what I'd call a cafeteria approach to planning one of these services works much better than the fixed menu, which is what most people encounter, I'm afraid. In other words, I try to offer people options, to include them in the process of planning the service or the event, invite their thoughts and contributions, and then try to mould them together. Liturgy, I think, needs to be flexible and tailored to specific needs. So I find that how can we make this the best possible event for you to be far more effective than this is what we do, you know. I'm not talking about reinventing the whole thing, though there's much that needs reinventing. I think it's more a matter of inclusiveness in the process. It's actually about treating people as adults instead of talking down to them as kids. In the past, that's how the church functioned. You know, society were treated like children by this, superior caste, fathers in God and all that kind of stuff. As Dietrich Bonhoeffer famously said, the world has come of age. It no longer buys into that kind of paternalism. And, so I think that if we can find ways to engage people, it's going to be a much richer and more meaningful experience for all concerned. Involvement, in my experience, is a shortcut to opening people up spiritually. It's a way into their hearts, but it's a way of opening them up spiritually, which should be surely our goal. And all of this fits into what I call an open systems framework of faith, a way of doing religion that dispenses with borders, with innies and outies and mentalities of us and them, the saved and the unsaved. When I look at, the world of nature or at the universe at large, I can't for a moment believe in a closed system God. Creation is such a magnificent, open process of change and evolution. I can't believe in a God who puts people into crude categories, believers and unbelievers. There's so much more to it than this. And God has to be better than that. And because even I know that there's more to a person than a religious tag or the lack of it, which after all is mostly based on chance histories or experiences or backgrounds. Even I know that who a person is and how they live, how they treat people, the values and priorities that they live by is much more important than whether or not they go to church or believe this or that doctrine. Even I know that millions of non-Christian people do the right thing, make good and righteous choices in life, work toward a better world when they don't need to. And I'm very sure God knows these things a whole lot better than I do. So moving into the future, I think that we must shift away from sectarianisms, from all of that us and them kind of attitude, to recognize that people are in different places within a dynamic process of life rather than simplistically here or there. Often people are moving toward God, following God's way without any God talk, without realizing that they're doing that, without even consciously believing in God, perhaps. So my approach to faith in general is what I'd call open systems rather than closed systems. And that, explains an awful lot of what I harp on about all the time. Let me show it you in terms of 3 slides here. This is what I would call a closed systems approach to faith. This is what, many of us are accustomed to, what we've grown up to. The church or faith is this closed thing. There's a border. You're either in or you're out. And that might be through your upbringing, it may be through a conversion experience. Some of these people are crossing the line here. And the object of Christian mission is to get people to cross that line, to commit, to be part of the church family. And the fact is, you're either in or you're out, and that's the way it is. By contrast, this is what I'd call an open systems approach to faith, where God is not seen as being uniquely present in the church, that God is present in the whole world. God is in the midst of life, in the midst of all that's going on in the world and all that's happening in people's lives. So there's no in or out. It's all about direction of travel. Some people are moving closer to God by the choices and decisions they make in life. Others are pulling away. Most of us are doing a little bit of to and fro in that, but hopefully leaning toward the light, leaning toward God, and shifting more in that direction. So, yeah, we're not looking and categorizing people as being in or out, but looking at what is the direction of travel that people are choosing. So when it comes to church, an open systems church still has an identity. Communities have identities, but it's a porous identity. It's not a line that you're in or you're out of, but it's something that is much more kind of open and flexible. And so, some people are actually, on the borders, on the fringes, and some people are outside, but doesn't mean to say they're far away from God. It just means they haven't found a place within this community yet. And it's all about trying to be a companionship of empowerment rather than an exclusive club. So that's how I see it from a kind of open or closed systems point of view. So what's going to happen to churches in the future? We all want to know. And the fact is nobody does know. But here's the thing. I believe that religion can have a vital part to play, provided it can evolve and make necessary adjustments. Otherwise, I don't think there is a future for faith and religion in that kind of formal institutional sense. I spoke last time in the shed about what I call black sheep spirituality, about finding our inner black sheep by withstanding the pressure of conformity. But I also stress the possibility of what I call a black sheep community, that being a black sheep doesn't mean that you have to be a loner, which is what we generally associate being a black sheep with. But for that to be the case, we need different kinds of communities. Community which dispenses with, conformity and tight membership, which rejects religious party politics in order to create this companionship of empowerment that I keep harping on about. It's about unity and diversity, where multiple ideas and integrities can coexist. Basically, it's grown-up religion, guys. That's what it is. Grown-up church. That's what we need. We've got to move on from people feeling like they remain in the Sunday school all their life to being a place where people feel that they're in adult communities. Sometimes people ask me why I'm still here. Why do I persist with the church? Why am I still a priest in the Church of England? Well, I am a sentimentalist, but I can tell you it's not because of sentimentalism. I've moved and changed around several times in my religious history, from this kind of church to that kind of church. And I believe that there are many things in the church that need to wither and die, many things that need to emerge. But beyond all of that kind of tussle, basically I'm committed to community. I think that being a person of faith means it's intrinsically communal. I think that being a human being is intrinsically communal. So I'm committed to community. I'm committed to working things through in tandem with a process of reformation of church and faith, so that faith communities can be an effective means of helping to repair the world. And we'll only do that if we are experiencing some ongoing reformation of our faith and of our way of being as a church. But if that's going to happen, if the church is to be part of building the future, it's important, first and foremost, that we stop hiding away from the facts of where we are right now. Stop living in denial. Stop insisting that all's well when it really isn't. I think we can find new dynamic connections with people in our communities, in the world. But it needs to be on the basis of the church learning from the wider community as well as contributing to it. Because, put this in capital letters, because God lives in the world, not just in this enclave called the church or religion. God lives in the midst of the world. God is already present and active in people's lives by whatever name or none, I love what Karl Rahner said. He was the great, Catholic thinker and theologian who said this. He said, we have to stop trying to pump religion into people's lives and start drawing it out of people's lives because it's already there. I love that. It's not us and them, it's us and us. So an open systems approach toward faith and church, I think's got a great deal to offer. And I reckon we'd all like to return to that thought, right? So we will come back to it again. Meanwhile, here's a prayer for times of adversity such as we are living in. Like the dartling thrush, flinging her soul upon the growing gloom, may we surge and swell with beautiful resistance toward all that diminishes and demeans our world. In times of adversity, let us radiate hope. In times of apathy, passion. In times of dejection, joy. And may we never exceed that how things are is how they always must be. Amen. Well, if you've got a drink handy, I've got some water in here because I'm a little bit dry, but I'm getting through it. I'd invite you to join me in a toast. I propose a toast to openness and welcome, to the God who relentlessly opens up new possibilities in creation, in our lives, who constantly invites us and lures us into better futures. A toast to the reality that how things are is not how they always have to be. To life, l'chaim. Fantastic. Well, guys, if you like what I'm doing here in the shed, you can support us. You can buy us a coffee. All you have to do is follow the link on the screen, and the rest's over to you. Thank you very much to all of those of you who do this and support us in lots of other ways too. It's much appreciated. One little advance notice, not this week, but the week after, I'll be leading a soul space. It's at 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 17th. Is that right? Yes. And we're looking at the subject, Then God Showed Up, which is linked to that beautiful icon by Kelly Lattimore, which is called Christ in the Rubble. Love to have you join me. So that's about it, guys. Thanks for joining me today. Thanks for all the love and support that I feel from you guys. And, here's to the future. Go out there and be kind to the world about you. Be kind to yourself. And stay human. I'll see you soon. I'm going to leave you actually with a fabulous song by Carrie Newcomer called I'm Ready for Change. And I hope we all are. See you soon.
I am willing to change. I am willing to see. I am ready to trust in you, in me. I am ready for change. There's a voice and it is mine. There's a vision and it is time. There is courage. The choice is here to live in love and not in fear. I am willing to change. I am willing to see. I am ready to try. There'll be pushback, and some will say, keep on doing things the same old way. But together, with hope and heart, we'll keep on changing, each doing our part. I am willing to change. I am willing to see. I am ready to trust in you, in me. I am ready for change. I am willing to change. I am willing to see. I am ready to trust in you, in me. I am ready for change. I am ready for change. I am ready for change.